Go time? Go time.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy. So Insomniac's next Spider-Man game is just around the corner, and I am so excited. I love the first two games. They were such an immersive experience. I really felt like for a little bit I was Spider-Man. And the trailers for the next game makes it look so incredible. We've got black suit powers, fresh new toys, and brand new villains. However, you may be a little lost going in if you didn't play the first two games.
Oh man, I have no idea what's going on.
The first two games? So you're telling me Spider-Man 2 is not even the second game in the franchise? Person, I am confused.
Yep, it's confusing, but the first Spider-Man game made by Insomniac came out in 2018, and that was followed by Spider-Man Miles Morales in 2020. So just to refresh your memory on what happened with those games, we're going to recap them and talk about how they could affect Spider-Man 2, or even how they could affect the MCU.
A video game character in the MCU?
Absolutely, but before we can talk about that, we have to get through our first part of our story, the 2018 Spider-Man game. We begin with a 23-year-old Peter Parker swinging into action to stop the Kingpin. After a short tutorial and a boss fight, Spidey hands him over to the cops and heads to his day job as a lab assistant for Dr. Otto Octavius.
Bad idea, this is a bad idea.
They are working on a special type of prosthetic limb and trying to get a demo together for investors. Meanwhile, Mary Jane, who is a reporter, is investigating some stolen artwork at an auction house. She finds a secret document with something called the Devil's Breath circled on a map, but she is interrupted by armed assailants in black and white demon masks. The demons manage to get their hands on the documents just before Peter arrives, and after some pizza and a quick Stan Lee cameo, MJ and Peter decide to investigate the gang together. But before they get to it, Peter heads back to check on Otto when they are interrupted by Norman Osborn himself, who is there to shut down Otto's research and acquire it for Oscorp, something Otto does not take to very kindly.
My dream is dead.
Peter barely has enough time to process that before being called away by Officer Jefferson Davis, who has a warrant for one of Fisk's old warehouses, and he teams up with Spidey to investigate.
Hey, wait a minute. Jefferson Davis is the name of Miles Morales' dad in the Spider-Verse movies. Is it the same guy?
It is the same guy. This Jefferson Davis is Miles' dad.
My son's a big fan.
Now, the warehouse is full of masked demon men who load supplies into a truck and then they dip. A big chase ensues, which ends with Officer Davis crashing his car into the demon's van, saving Spidey's life. The whole event turns Davis into a local hero. Peter heads home to sleep it off, and a few days pass before we find out that Peter is being evicted.
Yeah, I was wondering how a 23-year-old lab assistant could afford a place in Manhattan.
You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door!
That's because he could not afford a place in Manhattan, and he also discovers a recorded message from Felicia Day, the Black Cat. So Black Cat takes Peter on a few fetch quest side missions that you can sprinkle throughout your playthrough, but essentially you help her round up some dolls and bring them to the police station. Now the dolls have some surprise tech in them that disables the security system on the NYPD evidence locker, allowing Felicia to reacquire her old gear, which will become important later. The next morning, the city is having an award ceremony to commemorate Officer Davis's heroism at a re-election rally for Mayor Norman Osborn.
Mayor Osborn? Oh, that can't be good.
That's not even the most concerning part. Peter is in attendance, but his spider sense starts going off like crazy. Turns out the event is actually a public terrorist attack orchestrated by the demon gang that we saw earlier, now led by Martin Lee, one of Aunt May's co-workers at Feast. Feast, by the way, is the homeless shelter where Aunt May volunteers. It's also a place you stop by a lot in the game. So, harnessing some sort of black energy, Martin Lee fully transforms into the inverse Mr. Negative. Then Miles Morales gets his canon event when a suicide bomber on the stage right behind Officer Davis activates his vest, and Davis dives at him to cover the blast, costing him his life.
Well, you know what they say, with great power comes the inevitable tragic death of at least one parental figure.
They do say that, don't they?
Yes, they do say that.
The bombing causes a huge shockwave through the city, both physically and politically. The NYPD are now in outright open warfare on the streets of NYC. This gets the attention of Saber Security Forces, a private militia run by Silver Sable, who only seem to make matters worse with their high-tech weapons and edgy trigger fingers. Eventually, we learn that the Devil's Breath is a virus accidentally created by Oscorp, and the demons plan to unleash it on the city. Lee manages to get his hands on the Devil's Breath first, but after an intense boss fight, Peter disarms the virus bomb and locks Martin away.
Well, that was quick.
We are not done. Peter goes to celebrate being alive with Otto, who's also in much better spirits. He's developed a neural interface that allows him to control his prosthetics with his mind, and Peter thinks it's a bad idea because the prosthetics seem to be messing with his brain. Before he can even get through to Otto, we hear that the Devil's Breath has been stolen for a second time. Peter zips off to investigate just to get redirected again due to a massive prison break at Rikers Island. After forcefully rehabilitating several of the inmates, Spidey swings to the top of the building only to find Otto, who makes his big, dramatic, villainous enormous reveal and releases his own Sinister Six featuring Rhino, Scorpion, Vulture, Shocker, and Mr. Negative. Doc Ock knocks Spidey out and lets the Devil's Breath loose in Times Square. Now there's an infection spreading, gangs of escaped inmates, and an active war going on between the demons, Saber, and the NYPD. Spidey starts taking down baddies two at a time. First Vulture and Shocker, then Rhino and Scorpion. He manages to beat some answers out of them and discovers where to find a cure for the Devil's Breath. He tries to get the cure but is once again intercepted by Martin Lee, leading to yet another epic boss fight. Spidey comes out on top, but at the last second, Doc Ock storms in and knocks out Peter again and steals the cure. Spidey is taken for medical care where he learns that his Aunt May has been infected. With May barely hanging on, Spidey builds a whole new suit and takes down Otto in a dramatic rooftop battle once and for all.
Cue Nickelback.
Oh, not just yet. See, Peter gets the cure back to the lab, but there is not enough of it to save May and replicate it for the rest of the city. And replicating it will take more time than May has, which takes us to one of the most powerful moments probably of any video game, like, ever.
And I am so proud of you. And Ben would be too.
I don't know what to do.
Yes, you do.
The main story ends with MJ and Peter, who decide to give their relationship a shot, and Miles reveals to Peter that he has Spidey powers.
It's pretty weird, right?
Peter agrees to mentor him, and all is hunky-dory.
A happy ending.
Now, there are also a few side quests during the main storyline that are also worth mentioning. Now, the first is Tombstone's mission.
Oh yeah, the frozen pizza company. Oh, you deliver frozen pizzas to people in need.
No, Tombstone is a Spider-Man villain. He's basically a zombie drug dealer who is immune to pain. This mission involves busting up Tombstone's drug ring, one where he's trying to sell grave dust. That's a substance that turns people into pain-immune zombies.
Sounds like something from Reefer Madness.
You went back for that one. The other important side quest is the one featuring the Taskmaster.
Fitting name for a video game boss.
Yeah, it's a bit on the nose. He shows up after completing his side missions, which are essentially glorified stealth and/or fighting missions with certain objectives. After completing the task, there is a surprise boss fight. Now, when you win, Taskmaster tells Spidey that he was paid by a client to test Spider-Man, seeing if he was worth recruiting. Then he disappears and we don't hear from him again.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
Wait, are we gonna go through every single side mission?
Nope, but you should. They're totally fun, especially the one where you just get to help a homeless guy rescue his pigeons. But I only mentioned these two in particular because the trailer for Spider-Man 2 shows both Tombstone and Taskmaster on Kraven's list of potential targets in New York City. The list also includes the Kingpin, the Prowler, and one face that we can't quite make out, but we're pretty sure it's your mom. However, two characters on the list, Black Cat and the Wraith, are prominent characters in the City That Never Sleeps downloadable content. We gotta talk about that as well. The DLC comes in 3 parts. The first chapter, The Heist, starts with the Black Cat stealing flash drives from all the prominent crime families in New York City.
What's the matter with you?
She tells Peter that the hard-headed mob boss Hammerhead has her son hostage, a son that she implies is Peter's kid.
Damn it. Felicia has a son? Can't be. I mean, it could be, and I could be. No. I'm not gonna think about that right now.
The flash drive accesses a joint bank account owned by the most prominent mobs in New York City, and Hammerhead wants that cash for himself. However, the whole thing ends up being a big play. Black Cat never had a son.
Pete, you are not the
I'm kind of relieved.
And was only using Peter so she could steal the cash for herself. After she succeeds, Hammerhead goes to blow up her penthouse in retaliation, and despite Peter's best efforts, he doesn't make it there in time. Now this leads us to Turf Wars, the second DLC chapter. Hammerhead's gang has started stealing Sabertech, becoming stronger than ever. Officer Yuri Watanabe is leading a raid on one of his compounds with Spidey alongside. Things go south and Yuri starts going on a downward spiral. After multiple tragic losses, she loses it and heads to the bar with no name, shooting everyone in there. Peter discovers the scene and gets a lead on Hammerhead's plans.
Ready for... what's happening tonight again?
Bro, you hit your head or something?
He arrives at a shipyard for Hammerhead's big show, a live broadcast featuring hostages in a tub of slowly filling cement. Spidey does the Spidey thing, saves the hostages, and then takes on Hammerhead, who is decked out in a brand new Saber super suit. Spidey gets him to the ground, but he is interrupted by Yuri, who wants to take Hammerhead out for herself, permanently. Spidey tries to stop her, but fails to do so. which takes us into the third chapter of the DLC.
Man, these DLC stories all end on a real sad note.
Yes, but luckily the third one is literally called Silver Linings. It opens in the ambulance with Hammerhead's body. Turns out that Hammerhead is not dead, as one of his undercover boys shocks him back to life in the back seat. Regardless, Yuri is put on administrative leave. Now,
Wait, administrative leave? She just killed a bunch of people. That's just administrative leave?
I'm not going there. Now, Peter is busy cleaning up the whole Saber versus Mafia mess. The Silver Sable herself has decided to take a much more hands-on approach. In fact, she won't even let Spidey get in the way and starts throwing hands with Pete. Eventually, they team up after Spidey learns that she's fighting a war in her home country, and the tech that Hammerhead is stealing from her is hurting the war effort.
It's funny how life brings people together, huh?
They track down Hammerhead's men, who tell Sable that Hammerhead wants to have a sit-down on a rooftop, but it turns out to be an ambush, as well as a chance for Hammerhead to show off his updated outfit.
I like my outfits.
Then there is another epic battle on the back of a jet, and at the last second, Black Cat swoops in and lands a critical blow on Hammerhead.
I thought she was dead.
We all did, but cats have 9 lives.
But that doesn't explain how she could have survived.
9 lives, Doug. Cats have 9 lives. Anyways, moving on. So they devise a plan to equip a super laser to Sable's jet and fire it at Hammerhead's Iron Dome, which they use to take him down once and for all.
Wait, I thought you said Wraith was in the DLC.
Well, while she's never officially called Wraith, we know that's who Yuri eventually becomes in the comics. The DLC creates a perfect origin story for seeing her fully transformed into the character that's on Kraven's list that we saw in the Spider-Man 2 trailer. There are also 2 post-credit scenes, one after the DLC where Peter officially suits up with Miles for the first time, and the other one comes at the end of the main story where we see Norman Osborn looking over at a green tank, vowing to find a cure for his son Harry. His son's body is covered by a black goo.
Ew, David!
Kind of like the black goo Spider-Man was whipping around at the beginning of this video.
Oh yeah, dude, it's gotta be the Venom symbiote for sure. We already know that we are getting Venom in Spider-Man 2, and interestingly enough, we also know that this Venom will not be Eddie Brock.
He's not normally like that, right?
No. He's never like that.
But before we get to that, we've got to talk about the first Black Spider-Man with Venom powers in this universe, Miles Morales.
Miles has Venom powers?
Yes, but not how you think. One of the best things about Spider-Man Miles Morales is how Insomniac went above and beyond to distinguish Miles from Peter. Miles swings and interacts with the world in his own unique way, which makes it feel like you're playing a different character, even though both Spider-Men have the same abilities.
Same, but different.
However, Miles does have some of his own unique abilities, such as turning invisible and conducting electricity that he calls Venom.
Ooh, we gotta name it. How about Venom power? You know, because it stings.
So our story picks up a little over a year after the first game. Miles is learning the ropes from Peter, and the learning curve has become blatantly apparent when Miles botches a prison escort that leads to the Rhino escaping.
You want me to come down there so you can kill me?
Yes!
I'll be right there.
After Peter is knocked out by Rhino, Miles decides to take him head on, discovering his Venom Punch, one of his unique abilities that Peter doesn't have. After the fight, Peter says that he's going with MJ on a work trip for a few weeks, and he needs Miles to look after the city. During Miles' first night on patrol, he stumbles into a fight with these high-tech brutes, after watching an ominous message from Simon Kruger, leader of Roxxon. Now in the video, he introduces the concept of New Form, a new high-tech fuel source / nanotech-like metal.
It's nanotech. You like it?
Before he can get more info, he is ambushed by some thugs with super advanced tech. Now he is able to fight them off just in time to realize that he is late for Christmas dinner, where we meet the rest of the cast. Miles' mother Rio, who's running for city council, as well as his best friend Genki and also Finn. After dinner, Genki reveals that he has invented an app that allows people to call for Spider-Man, and the first one to ring is Miles' uncle.
You know, it's the family business.
He helps out his uncle, and in doing so, learns about an underground shipment of New Form by a group called the Underground. He also gives Miles a subway pass with his name on it. Later, one of Rio's rallies is attacked by members of the Underground, led by our main villain, the Tinkerer, who is very quickly revealed to be Miles' friend, Finn.
That's suspicious.
The fight results in a major bridge catastrophe. Miles manages to clean up some of the mess, but Roxxon wants to take him in anyway, which becomes a very convenient time for Miles to discover that he can turn invisible. After some investigating and a few heart-to-hearts, Miles discovers that Finn's brother, Rick Mason, who recently passed away, was very sick, and New Form exposure was the cause. He tracks Finn's phone to the New Form lab, but he is intercepted by the Prowler, one of his father's old supervillain adversaries, who in turn reveals himself to be Miles' Uncle Aaron.
Uncle Aaron? You're the Prowler?
What? Gasp!
Wait, how are you surprised? It's the same twist from the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie, remember?
I didn't realize it was a canon event.
Well played, sir. After getting some advice from his uncle on how to infiltrate the lab, Miles discovers a video that shows Rick Mason giving his life to stop Kruger's new form reactor, while Finn watched helplessly from afar. Miles decides to finish what they started and use his new Venom abilities to absorb all the energy from the reactor and release it.
Seems like a lot of wasted energy, pun intended.
Well, after the mission, Miles gets some advice from his uncle on what to do about Finn, who tells him to join the underground and keep the fact that he is Spider-Man from Finn, which he does. He takes advantage of his new camouflage ability and uncovers Finn's plan to blow up Roxxon Plaza with new form, just like what happened on the bridge. But Spidey gets caught. Finn manages to catch him and reveals to her that he is Spidey.
All along it was you!
She freaks out and splits, so Miles talks to his Uncle Aaron about all of this. But it seems like Prowler was playing him all along. He uses the info his nephew gave him to tip off Roxxon, who ambushed Miles and Finn with a Roxxon-enhanced Rhino, just as they were about to talk about the whole We're Both Superhero situation. He takes Spidey to Simon Krieger, who is super excited to figure out a way to monetize Spider-Man's abilities.
Money, money, money. Yeah, capitalism do be capitalism.
Easy, comrade. Miles and Finn manage to escape, and after another tussle with Super Rhino, Finn kills him after he mocks her brother's death. They head their separate ways, and Miles discovers that Roxxon has improved the reactor core, meaning that if Finn goes through with her plans, she'll take out all of Harlem. He heads out to stop Finn, but he's ambushed yet again by the Prowler. He locks him into a cage to try and stop him, but Miles busts through with another Venom punch. After a quick family feud, Miles comes out on top and tells his uncle that their little team-ups are over. Finn and Miles head to Roxxon Plaza, where they face off in yet another epic rooftop battle. After the massive boss fight, Miles finally gets through to her just as the reactor is about to explode. Miles tries to absorb the reactor's energy, but he has no idea how to release it safely. So Finn breaks good and flies into the sky with Miles in her arms so he can release the energy safely above NYC, sacrificing herself in the process.
Rest in power, Miss Main Villain for the entire game.
4 weeks later, Peter is back and checks in with Miles. Aaron also came forward about his prior dealings with Roxxon, taking them down once and for all and giving himself a reduced sentence. We also get yet another post-credit scene featuring Harry again, which shows him waking up in his weird green Bacta tank and Norman Osborn demanding his release, despite his doctor's clear concerns about his current condition.
So all the post-credit scenes are about Harry and Black Goo.
Yes, they are. Insomniac has been building Venom up as a villain for a while, and from what we've seen in the trailers, it looks like they are doing the space Spawn justice. Now, since we know that Eddie Brock isn't going to be Venom, Harry Osborn seems like a pretty safe assumption for the sinister symbiont. After all, he's been hidden away for years now, contaminated with this ominous black goo. And Venom is certainly not the only threat that Spidey will face in the next game. As we said before, one of the main villains teased is Kraven the Hunter.
Oh wait, who's that?
Well, he is a big game hunter, and by big game, I mean superhumans. The trailers seem to indicate that he's headed to New York not only for Spidey, but for an entire list of soups, including a new face, the Lizard.
Yeah, that's pretty cool and all, but I thought you said this was going to connect to the MCU. That was the micro hook that kept me watching this long in the video.
Well, it is possible. See, one of the reasons we do these recaps is for people who want to play the new game without necessarily playing the first two. Now, the recaps work for that, but there's also a little bit more to it. More and more frequently, video game storylines have had an impact on larger narratives, like how Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor fleshed out aspects of Kenobi. Now, Spider-Man is no exception, especially since he's fond of multiversal travel. Now, while Insomniac Spider-Man has not swung into the multiverse just yet, plenty of other Spider-Men have, to much financial success.
Nintendo. It's a license to print money.
Across the Spider-Verse made several mentions of the Spider-Man from this universe, including some clips from the game and a Spider-Man dressed up in that Insomniac unique suit. Now, since Tom Spider-Man hasn't had the best experience with the multiverse, he may be hesitant to visit another Spider-Verse anytime soon. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't see Insomniac Spider-Man in an episode of What If.
Oh, that would be so cool. I'd love to see that.
Right? I mean, we could combine all of these stories into one huge, massive event. Like, even if these stories are just contained to their game verse to start, the stories told in this game are seriously some of the best Spider-Man stories I've ever seen. And the sequel looks like it's going to be just as exciting, especially now that you know the full backstory. Right, Doug?
You know, I still can't play the game. Got no thumbs.
And that's why we do the videos for dogs that don't have thumbs. Well, that's everything you need to know before diving into Spider-Man 2. What did you think of Insomniac Spider-Man games? Any details that we missed that we should have included? Well, you can let me know down in the comments or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.